Here I'm showing the mainly Infect blue and green deck from new Phyrexia. It's a theme deck, and I'm going to use it to build a mini Infect cube, simply because the way Infect works, you really want to keep all your Infect cards together. And the way that I want to build this little mini cube, I want it to be a two-player mini cube where both players get to play Infect. If you put Infect in any cube, you're either gonna not draw enough cards to have Infect and not use it. Well, actually, that's usually what's going to happen. And so the better way, I think, to deal with Infect is to put it in its own little sandbox and for all players to play Infect. In this case, it would be 2. So here you have a 1-drop Glistener Elf. All of these cards have Infect unless I mention it otherwise. It's a 1/1/1, and there are 3 in the deck. Then you've got Cyst Bearer at 3-drop, and it's a 2/3 creature. There's 2 of them. Then you have 1 Blight Mamba. It's a 2-drop, and it also has regenerates. So 2/1/1, but you can regenerate it. That means you can put a 2-drop shield on it, and when it gets killed, you actually don't lose it. Then you have 1 Rot Wolf at 3-drop, and whenever a creature dealt damage by this card this turn is put into a graveyard, you may draw a card, which is almost reads like a blue ability, so it's a 3/2/2. Then you have 2 of Mycosynth Fiend, a 3-drop, and Mycosynth Fiend gets +1/+1 for each poison counter your opponent has. You see, I want to make sure that the autofocus isn't going crazy on me. Wish I could. It almost makes me want to focus it on my own. Again, for each poison counter your opponents have, of course, when it says your opponents have, that means that this will be a great card to play in Commander. Then 2 Viridian Betrayers, a 3-drop. It's got Infect as long as an opponent is poisoned. So this is kind of like you really get to work up to finish your 10 poison counters that you can deal to win, because you're going to be dealing 3 with this card. It's a 3/3/1, and so you would want to play this card to finish off your opponent. And if you don't, then you can use one of these cards. A Spinebiter has a 6-drop 3/4. You may have Spinebiter, I'm sorry, assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. Have to think about that. Then in the case of Plague Maw Beast, you can, if you tap it without really doing anything with it, you can sacrifice a creature and then you can proliferate. And proliferate reads, you choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them, and give each another counter of a kind already there. I've not played this card. I don't know how the counters work, but I'm sure there's a way to use this card well. It's a 5/4/3. Then you have the topper of the deck, one of these all over glossy foils, which a lot of times look really, really dark, but in this case it actually looks very pretty. Phyrexian Swarm Lord. It's a 6-drop 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put a 1/1 green insect creature token with Infect onto the battlefield for each poison counter your opponents have. Wow, this would be something to like lose a bunch of friends in a Commander get-together, because you really infect the bejesus out of everybody with that one. Then you've got 3 Leeching Bite, instant, a 2-drop. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Another target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So you can help one of your creatures and hurt one of your opponent's creatures. That sounds pretty good. Naturalize, a very familiar card to most Magic players. A 2-drop destroy target artifact or enchantment. Then we're going to go through the blue cards. It's very interesting that the one deck with Infect that was issued in New Phyrexia as a theme deck, it does not have black. And so, and black being the other color that got a bunch of Infect cards, it has blue, which got a few cards. Blighted Agent is unblockable, and it's a 2/1/1. There's 3 of them in the deck. Then there's Steady Progress, which is an instant, a 3-drop, and it allows you to proliferate. Let's see how my autofocus is doing. Okay. Then you've got 2 of Viral Drake. It's got flying, so it's a flyer, and for 4 you can proliferate, and it's a 4/1/4. Little on the weak side. That's a little better. Defensive Stance is an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets -1/+1. So it's one of these weird enchantment auras where you can both hurt and help yourself depending on how you use it. But it's a 1-drop, so that's pretty good. Then you get 2 of Chained Throat Seeker. This is a creature, 6/5/5. It cannot attack unless defending player is poisoned. So it'll just sit there if you haven't done anything. But hopefully if you're playing an Infect deck, you would have used any one of your early drops to inflict at least 1 poison counter on your opponent. When I used to play against Infect decks in the last standard, they won pretty quickly, or they didn't. It was very difficult to win late in the game for Infect because most of the cards are really good in the early game. Then you've got an instant, Fuel for the Cause. It's a 4-drop. Counter target spell, then proliferate. Counter spells that are this heavy don't tend to be that useful. But there it is. And of course, I already talked about Chained Throat Seeker. Then Corrupted Resolve is a 2-drop counter target spell if its controller is poisoned. That could be useful, especially if you just dealt a poison counter in the first turn. Then you've got a rare, Inexorable Tide from Scars of Meridan. It's an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. 5-drop. Sounds to me like a junk rare. Corrupted Conscience is a 5-drop, an enchantment aura, and you get to control enchanted creature, and it has Infect. That could be useful if your opponent's got a very big creature that's hitting you hard. You can enchant it and then turn it against your opponent. Then you've got a Wall of Tangercord, a 2-drop artifact creature, 0/6, so a wall. It's got Defender, meaning that you cannot use it to attack. And if you give it 1 green, it actually gains reach, so it can block your opponent's flyers. And you've got Core Prowler. It's got Infect. It's a 4-drop 2/2, and in artifacts, 4/2/2 is not too bad. 3/2/2 would have been even better. And when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, proliferate. So that's a nice ability for this uncommon. Then you've got 2 Trigon of Infestation, which is an artifact. It enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. And then whenever you remove a charge counter, you got to pay 2. And you put a 1/1 green insect creature token with Infect onto the battlefield. That could be very useful. Contagion Clasp was very useful. I saw it being played all the time. When Contagion Clasp enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. It's a 2-drop. And then for 4 more, you get to proliferate.